Guys, we're back. Episode 6 and 7 of Foundation Season 2. We're almost there. We're almost
Mhm.
caught up. It's almost time for Season 3. Luke, Kyle. Actually, let's talk about this. We got Luke. We thought we weren't going to have Luke, but he's here. Look at him. He's looking fresh.
Mhm.
If you guys are on YouTube, you can see that beautiful face. We actually have Luke. We thought me and Kyle were going to be running the show by ourselves, but we have Luke running the show. But Kyle, let's start with you. What do you do? Go. What'd you think of these 2 episodes? We're getting close, man. We're getting close.
I don't really know the right way to describe the two of them because it seems, and maybe it's been this way a lot of the season, it's a mixture of setup and also some confirmation things, but also some of the confirmation things are more characters in the show getting confirmation of things that we have already been aware of. So it's always interesting as the information can kind of permeate throughout the show and that we've kind of been almost, let's say, theorizing about it, like, oh, what's it going to be like when this person finds this out or when this comes to the surface and things like that. So things are, I think, just moving in a positive direction generally. I'm really excited to get to the end of this season and see, because we've been talking about war for lots of episodes at this point, and we're really at the tipping point. It feels like it's at the end of episode 7. So I'm excited to talk about all this stuff too.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about. I'm so in on this TV show. I really enjoy it. I can't wait to get caught up so that we have Luke here and we can all be on the same level playing field where we can all talk theories, etc. But yeah, there's some stuff to talk about. Like Harry, is he dead, Kyle? I'm not buying it, but I mean, how do you get out of that? We kind of saw it. Did we see it? I don't know. But let's actually go through the episode. I'm ready to just get right into it. So, Luke, let's go. Let's do it.
And let me just cue you guys up for something, because I was looking at IMDb, and everybody knows that I love IMDb, just as like a reference when we're talking about different TV shows. So Foundation as a whole has a 7.6 average, right? And we have yet to have an episode that's more than a 7.9 for the entire 2 seasons. So what that means is that these next 3 episodes are significantly, like, by far the highest rated. Like, we're talking more than half a point each, at least higher than anything we've seen so far. So the last 3 episodes specifically of season 2 are the reason that it's like considered like amazing right now, because it's just kind of starting to peak. And if it continues with the quality of these last 3 episodes going into season 3, I think we'll be in a great place. So I think you should be feeling more chessboard setup-y during this piece of it, and the next 3 episodes are going to be a lot of action, a lot of payoff, if I remember correctly. And based on the ratings, like, there's some really high scores, like we're talking 8.6, 9.2, stuff like that. So like, we're looking at some really good episodes coming up. But for today, we're going to be focusing, of course, on episode 6 and 7. For these 2, it actually kind of stopped at a perfect time for us, because you guys get to theorize what's going on in Ignis. We didn't get too much with Hober Mallow or Rios, but that is queuing up for a good ending of the season. But today we're going to start with Ignis. This is going to be the majority of the podcast. A lot of this is going to be centered on Gail, Sal, and Tollum and Harry. So Tollum, right? We'll keep calling her Tollum, and the Mentalic. So let's kick it off and just go right to where the potential Foundation 2 setup is. And this is really going to be about the beginning of this, having Sal started to experience more of the rules around the Mentalics. Like, we see her interact with a kid. We learn about the unvoicing. We learn about the different backgrounds of some of these characters that Tellum has been gathering here on this planet that have this ability. They're doing their best to start adding some rules, and we like rules. We as like podcasters, it's easier to know when there's things that are set up like that. So I think a lot of this was good information, nothing too crazy, but it's all about just being psychics in some sort of way. So we get all their origins, and then we basically have the request of Tellum to have them stay here and not leave. And then we also talk about the mule a little bit. So it's a lot of setup. Is there anything you guys want to pull out from the beginning couple of scenes on Ignis before we really jump into some of the meteor stuff?
Personally, I feel like a lot of the stuff we might talk about gets expanded on more. It feels like later on. Although I will just, I guess, reiterate that it is interesting that we're getting these different aspects to, let's just, I guess, just call it their power.
Yeah.
And this was, I think they set it up well. It's like a little creepy too. It's a little unsettling. Like this is, I feel like for me, over these 2 episodes, they hit like an interesting balance between oh, this is kind of nice, where they kind of get to live together and be safe. And then also there's this like consistent undercurrent of like there's a little bit of weird, creepy
Yeah.
things going on too. And I mean, not to completely single out this little boy, but I feel like he played a big role in that too. Of like he himself wasn't the most settling, let's say, presence,
Yeah.
not the most comforting almost ambassador, at least in my eyes. So I thought that they introducing it through these initial scenes, but I thought that that thread throughout these episodes was successful.
Mhm.
Yeah, the little kid does seem to show up at very convenient times.
Yeah.
I agree with Kyle here, where a lot of what I want to talk about is based on what we learn about the Mentalics and the rules, and more so how we feel about them so far. I don't fully have a lot to talk about specifically with certain scenes. So, Luke, you let us know. Do you want us to start talking about it now, or
Yeah.
do you want to just go through?
I'll cue you up for something here because also in these early scenes, we find out confirmation if it wasn't obvious already because we've been talking about it. But the mule is a Mentalic after Tellum saw this through Gale. So that's just cool to know that he's just a super powerful Mentalic that has like a vendetta. We don't know what that means for his origin. We don't know what that means for what's to come. But either way, just keep that in the back of your head. But later on, Tellum does visit Gale on the ship and she shows the next level of Mentalic abilities where it's almost psychic control, like Professor X straight up, right? Where you
Yeah.
have the ability to overwhelm their free will. But we also see her just go into her mind and take her back to some of the past on Synax. I kind of want to just open the floor right now to get your guys' opinions on where you think this is going, because she does say that she wants Gale to be the successor when Tellum moves on here because she's somebody that everybody would follow because of how powerful she is and just how smart she is. So I think now's a good time. And you can even loop in, of course, some of the information you have of the future of her drowning Harry and then potentially Sal too, what you think this means, but I just want some guesses on where you think this storyline with Gale and Tellum specifically is going.
I think that there's just an inevitable clash that it seems like they're moving us towards, over these episodes. Tellum just has I don't know why the word abundance mindset is kind of percolating around my brain, because she almost has the opposite of that. And I even had a quote later on, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but she is so focused on their like safety and survival and like staying hidden that, and while we know that Gale's purpose is, the safety of the entire galaxy and like the
Right.
human race. So there's just a clash there at just of the scope of what they really care about, and what they think the Mentalics can be beneficial for, and I think that hopefully we'll get into Tellum's story a little bit too. I mean, we got the trickles of, the little boy and other people. I think Lauren as well tells a little bit about what he went through, and we see the scars that people have, but we don't know a ton, I think, unless I'm forgetting about Tellum, why she thinks the way that she does. Harry to her is a big threat. He's outside of the bounds of, let's say, her community and that what she wants to protect. So at that point, you become expendable, while Gale just has a much larger, I think, focus and scope of what she cares about. So I just think that there's always, like, I think Gale enjoys the respect that Tellum gives her and like her recognizing how smart Gale is and how capable. But I think that like being puffed up will only last so long, like that veneer will wear off. And I think the reality of the differences between them is really going to show for Gale.
Yeah, Tellum is interesting, everybody drink, because she's not necessarily an antagonist here. She cares about her people, but she's doing things as, she's killing Harry, maybe killing Harry. She's killing Harry. She's doing things against anything that's not a Mentalic, right? And I like what you're saying there, Kyle, about the puffing up of Gale. My thoughts here are that she knows exactly what to say to Gale and how to say it because she's in Gale's mind and she's able to so easily get into Gale's mind and Sal. And this is something that we're going to have to hopefully learn or have them learn in the future if they're going to, without, for lack of a better term, defeat Tellum. they're going to have to be able to defend against this kind of stuff, right? You have to close your mind. You have to be able to put stuff in the back of your mind, as Gail says to Sal at one point. Tell knows exactly what to say. And she's saying all the right things at this moment. And Gail is seemingly eating it all up. Sal is not, right? Whether Sal is able to defend better or she's just logically able to defeat Tellum and what she's trying to say to her, who knows? But Tellum is obviously right now, as far as we know, the strongest Mentalic. Maybe it's maybe it's something like the Wheel of Time where Raw Power we're talking about, Gail and Sal have a huge potential. They're just not there yet. But Tellum on screen at this moment is the strongest Mentalic. And we're seeing a lot of pretty crazy things happen where I like that they're putting some rules down, but I feel like we're going to need some more rules because it is very hard to see or to know what's going on screen when you can easily say that these things are happening in the person's head that you're watching, as in teleporting, transporting from one spot to the other. Is she actually doing that, or is it just in Gail's point of view, right? Certain things like that, changing your face, etc. So
tough for podcasters.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's tough just because even as the viewer, you don't know what's true, what you're seeing. They're basically like tricking you also. And, in my eyes, what I'm thinking is it's all bullshit and it's all, the mind tricks. You're right. Tellum's not actually transporting from one spot to the other, but we have to see it that way because that's how Gail's seeing it. So we'll put a pin in that because I want to talk about a lot of things that happen throughout this episode and the next episode about what we're seeing, if it's true, if it's not true. We get a huge reveal with Harry when we think he's rolling out, and they know they reveal that it's not actually Harry that rolled out on them on the beggar. Harry seemingly was susceptible to this power and was, convinced to walk away from Sal and Gail during an argument. It's a kind of broken OP power unless you can learn to defend it. And I have a feeling that this is what it's going to have to be. They're going to have to learn how to defend against it.
And I like that you called that out because there's a lot of cool cinematography that's going on throughout this episode. Sometimes they make almost like a smudged peripheral view, and like you don't really know what's happening. So yeah, it makes it tough. Unreliable narrator being the audience at this point, like it is interesting because you don't know what's real and what's not. But you did mention Harry right there, who, yes, he's obviously, this is the antithesis of his whole being, where like, if your mind's not a sanctuary, then what is? So he's freaking out about this whole thing. He's the only non-mentalic here. So it makes sense. But let's talk about his conversation real quick with Sal, because they talk about some good stuff here. And this is some questions I think you guys have both been talking about for the last 3 podcasts or so, all around his biological body, and then the connection of the AI Harry that we have resurrected here with the Vault Harry and how they're communicating in the Prime Radiant. There was a lot of cool information here that I think cleaned up some things, and maybe not perfectly, but it added some information for us. So did you guys pick up anything specific from those conversations?
Yeah, so I think the actual conversation between Sal and Harry is the meta conversation we were having on the podcast. Why he has a physical body again. Is it because he needs to have a physical body for a certain reason, or is it because they want to make him mortal again? And who is actually this person or this thing that is bringing him back to a physical body? And, Harry says one thing, Sal says another, and they're kind of butting heads a little bit. But Harry loves these kind of debates and these kind of conversations. And I don't know which way I'm taking it. If I'm going to say that, yeah, I don't know. Kyle, what do you think? Do you think someone is bringing him back to life to be mortal, to make him weaker? Or do you believe it has to be a thing, as in what Harry said, where it's the resurrection? Because Sal did have a pretty good counter argument where she said, well, you kind of were resurrected, bro. We saw it on Foundation. That's what the vault is.
It's so tough when you add into the wrinkle of what happens in the wave pool.
Yeah.
Of, does it matter at this point why it happened? I mean, I guess that is the perspective that Harry's physical body is dead again.
Yeah.
Of where does he get resurrected to then die? Like literally thinking off the top of my head of what he actually did with this new life. I there wasn't a ton that was done, to impact anything. And then let's say he's floating lifelessly in the wave pool. So what was the point at all?
Well,
feel
I
like
will
that's what
point
I
this
walked
out.
away from.
Let me just say that the AI version of him will no longer exist, though, if they did bring it into a biological body, then kill him, right? Just trying to think through
The
like
AI
what
version of him that was in The Beggar, that was with Gale and Sal, correct?
Yes, yeah. So that, I mean, I guess
There-
that could
we
be a
still have the Vault
goal.
version. Yeah, I mean, Kyle, let's just talk about it right now because I feel like we're gonna keep like beating around the bush and trying not to say it when we're not getting there in our natural conversation. Let's just talk about it. So they obviously, quote unquote, everybody drank kill off Harry right after bringing him back to life. And of course, for us as podcasters covering 2 episodes at a time, he literally just came back, right? And even if you're a viewer, he pretty much just came back. I think it's bullshit, but I can't figure out why I think it's bullshit or how it's bullshit, right? I can't figure out how they're going to bring him back to life or even show us that he never died, but I don't think he's dead just because I can't imagine that you give us this huge storyline where, oh my gosh, Harry has a physical body again. Oh my gosh, now he's dead again. I just can't really see it. Luke, the thing that you're saying about it removes the AI, that's the only thing that I can think of where that's the goal of the person bringing him back if it's nefarious, right? Now the AI version of Harry and the physical body version of Harry is gone. We've seen so many things in these episodes. Harry himself, not himself, jumped on the beggar and rolled out on them, but it's not Harry. Do I believe that dead Harry is another person with another face? It looks like Harry. No, but I'm just saying, like, we're seeing so many things that are just unreliable narrator. Where can we fully believe it? I don't know. We got the freaking life flashing before your eyes death. I mean, that seems kind of final, but I just can't imagine that you bring him back and then 2 episodes later he's dead again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with the line of it's bullshit, but I don't know how it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Are you both putting that on the board that he's alive still?
I mean, I guess I just want it. Like, if he's actually dead, I can't imagine me being more upset with the decision the show has made.
Yeah, I agree. I feel
Besides
like
the time dilation bullshit that they pulled in episode.
Hey,
4
we
or 5.
decided the author of Foundation didn't know about that yet.
let
Whatever.
me ask you this question too, really quickly. Do you know this at all, Luke? Do you know if this whole Mentalix thing is part of the books?
I don't know. I'm
Okay,
not sure.
okay. Anyway, yeah, I really can't even give you a good theory. My only theory is that we've seen so much unreliable narrator stuff in these episodes that they can literally just say whatever the hell they want and it's not actually Harry. I don't really know how that works though, because we're seeing so many point of views. Like we see Tellum with him actually in the wave pool. We see him have his life flash before his eyes, which we'll get into with some great freaking flashbacks. And then we see Sal see him when she catches up to him. And then we'll talk about what we see with what happens with Sal. I mean, I don't know, but I do agree, Kyle. I just think it's BS. So I don't have a theory, but I'm just gonna say I don't believe it.
I just don't know what level of technology they have, what type of even maybe medical knowledge do they have. I mean, I could see an angle where they put him in this near-death experience so that he thinks about and has that like life flashes before my eyes so that they then can have all that information about him if they can read his mind while it's happening.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
But like, is
And
that
then
a way to control him because he's a useful pawn? Or like, what is the benefit of having that information? I mean, because how do you explain the fact that it feels pretty clearly like his lifeless body is floating there? Unless it's all been planned out that they knew Salvor was going to come and do all of this stuff, and that they just planted someone there floating with a fake dead Harry face on it, and then it's revealed that it's not, and then I don't know. I mean,
so there's fake Harry in the beggar, there's fake Harry in the wave pool. Harry's just sitting there watching TV like Murderbot, chilling in the corner as a prisoner.
I don't know how much I would even like that. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I'm so, let's say, cautiously optimistic about what's going to happen, but I feel like there's some potential for it to feel like some ass pull BS.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, think about it. Right now, if they're not doing it themselves, meaning Tellum and the rest of the Mentalics, if they're not doing some kind of weirdness with their powers to actually have him be alive, I like what you're saying, Kyle. Maybe having his life flash before his eyes and they can read his mind at that moment and use that as leverage to constantly torture him but keep him alive. Maybe again, when Sal shows up, he would have to be another person with another face. But like at this moment, Sal doesn't seem to be someone who could have saved him. She's showing up and seeing freaking him laying there dead in the water. Gail seems to be under the influence of Tellum and doesn't seem to be aware of anything happening with Harry. Now, I do want to get into that a little bit. Like, I do think that there is a chance that Gail is playing them, but I don't see how she could be playing them in a way that saves Harry's life. But I do think that certain conversations that she has with Sal indicates that she might know that there's some trickery going on and that she might be like, yo, like when she says pump the brakes a few times, maybe she is beating the Mentalics with some logic, just not showing it because she knows that she doesn't want to show her cards. But I can't see how that saves Harry either. So I just don't know. I mean, if it doesn't have anything to do with Tellum like tricking, then I'll need a good explanation.
Yeah, to jump on the Gale point, I think I'm the opposite. I feel like this part of her story is specifically meant to expose that character flaw that she has that Sal kind of mentions in episode 6, right? Are we 6? No, episode 7 rather. When she says, Sal says, I grew up with everyone telling me I was special, and that really fucked me up growing up. And like, I just want you to know that like you think that way too. Like you've had everyone around you saying that you're special, and like you should be careful about what Tellum is saying to you and what these people are saying to you. And I feel like that's going to be Gal's story with this stuff, or at least part of it, is going to be
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
her having to confront that part of herself that like, and I'm sure it's a part of everyone almost too, of like, yeah, I would like to be told I'm special all of the time and that I'm super smart and that I can save the galaxy. And like, how could you not lean into that a little bit, and I just think part of that will be the danger of actually her thinking that and things like that. I feel like too with the Tellum aspect of it, I can't tell if Tellum is underestimating Gale
Right.
or she's like maybe overestimating herself, because when Tellum says like, she kind of wants Gale to be the successor, but we also kind of know that Gale's kind of number one motivation is, the foundation's goals.
Yeah.
Is to further foundation, and that doesn't seem like Tellum's goal. So is Tellum confident that she can convince her not to go down that path, or what? I'm not entirely sure of what that
Maybe
is.
Tellum. Yeah. Maybe Tellum thinks that she can convince Gale the importance of protecting the Mentalics, and maybe as long as Harry is out of the equation, because that's the deal, get Harry out of the equation. Gale can still become who she wants to become as long as she puts the Mentalics first. Now, again, like you said, Kyle, that's a big assumption on Tellum's part. She needs to actually believe. I mean, maybe she doesn't care if Gale ends up saying, she does say herself, like, sure, call it Foundation 2. I really don't care, but Harry can't be involved. Maybe she doesn't care if Gale goes through with the plan as long as the Mentalics are cared for by Gale and not having Harry be involved.
I just had a eureka moment of they put Harry in the near-death experience and she planted that name of the old like imperial investigator woman that was at the college when they're by the fishing hole, and then they capture Harry. They put him in the wave pool. He has the flashbacks of his life. And in the flashbacks of his life, what's one of the main things we find out is the process of creating the Prime Radiant. He has the memory of it being flat on the table when the woman is in the room. And that's just them because they want to find the Prime Radiant to destroy the Prime Radiant. It was on the table when Tellum and Gale are having that conversation in the beggar. Tellum now will have the information from reading Harry's mind that the prime meridian can become flat like that to be hidden. That's how they'll find the prime meridian. Tellum doesn't need to convince Gale to not do the foundation stuff. She just needs to destroy the prime meridian. So that's the information of what Gale could possibly follow, because no prime meridian, Gale's kind of flying in the dark, and there's kind of you have to eventually give up on the goal of the foundation. So there you go.
Interesting. All right, I'm in. That's fine. That would be a good explanation of why you're going to keep Harry alive and fake his death. I really do like the idea of
that doesn't need Harry at all. That would just, we needed his memory. Now his body itself means nothing to us. Like, he can die now. So that's
so you're saying he can be dead. Yeah. That's true. And I mean, worst case scenario for as Tellum being very antagonistic is if you're going to play off of Gale's love for Harry, obviously they butt heads and she's mad at him, but she still loves him, cares for him at least. You could, and if you want to go super antagonistic, have him have his near-death experience, bring him back to life at the very last second, or not let him die at the very last second, and then hold him hostage. The complete opposite of what they did in the beginning of their introduction, where they said, you're not really hostage here. We took you, but it's just, do what you want. They're actually going to hold Harry hostage so that Gale does what they say, follows. But then again, if Tellum dies, if Tellum dies like she says she's going to, then Gale just takes over and says, all right, release Harry. So yeah, I'm not sure. Again, it's very, very confusing, but I do really like the idea of getting the light flashing before his eyes moments, that so they can steal them or they can read into them.
Yeah, that seems to be what, I mean, it was good for us as an audience, so we get to know Harry's backstory, but I think for them, they don't give a fuck about, his life mate and how that stuff went down. I think they care more about like there was that specific memory and that how he was hiding the prime meridian through its developmental stages. So I like that though. I mean, if that is what happens, I mean, that's a great way to write into, like, we get the benefit of Harry's backstory, and then there's also like a benefit to what we're going to say is almost our antagonist in the moment.
Yeah.
I think you guys just pretty much covered the rest of the Ignis bucket right there. We're going to break down a couple more things here, but some other things that we just didn't mention that I want to just say here is that it's confirmed, like, the difference between the two Harrys, meaning like the Vault Harry doesn't know anything about the second foundation. That's super important. And then that we know that the prime radiant and superposition can communicate to each other. So that's just how we're going to write through some plot holes, I would assume, through communication methods. But anyway, yeah, you guys did a good job. Like, we really needed to, I really want to talk about the Harry flashback a little bit more, just because I thought it was so well done, and we got to meet Yana, and she's a really cool character. I thought it was so badass the way that when he was a kid he discovered the patterns and how he uses that in the end to take his revenge. And I think this was a reveal for the first time that we knew Yana's been dead forever, but we didn't know that she was pregnant at the time, which adds even more of a empathetic layer to Harry's backstory. You can't convince me that he's like that much younger in some of these scenes though, but there's nothing you can do there.
Face.
I would love to watch a little, like, couple episodes spinoff of him growing up, because he's just like Gale. He's just so smart and resourceful. This was cool. We got to see his relocation, the forced relocation to Trantor because of this whole scheme. And it really gets covered in the veil of what Yana was telling Harry, which is, how do you deal with the Empire rather than being as close as possible and under their nose? Like, so it adds more layers to the reason he would even fold and go to Trantor. But it was a sad backstory. She seemed freaking awesome, like the perfect pair for him. And it was just interesting to see it through his eyes as he's drowning in the pool from Tellum. Do you guys want to mention anything else? I mean, Kyle, you pulled out the idea about the prime radiant and like what the little bit of information we got from there that potentially they're stealing from him. Anything specific you want to bring out though for those couple of different scenes as we're skipping around through his love story?
Truth be told, no, beyond like a more general take of that, I just thought it was well done. It was enjoyable to watch. Classic. My dead wife was the coolest person to ever exist.
Yeah.
So or even husband, or partner, whatever you want to say. It always goes down like that. It makes us feel extra bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was awesome, and they're a perfect pair for each other. and you find out that she is the reason the Prime Radiant can exist and the reason psychohistory actually can be something that could be used and developed for the purpose that it was. And it was a very, very sad story. Their child probably would have been the most brilliant person that ever existed on the face of this. I can't say Earth, but
Yeah.
of all the universes in the entire galaxy and then whatever you want to say. But otherwise, the only other thing I want to say about this was badass revenge, of course. But you have the scene where Harry is just playing around with his little gadget, and he gets in the car, for lack of a better term, car transporter, and basically he's in full control here. He's like, I know Jan is dead. Here's the Prime Radiant. Well, he gives the Prime Radiant first, which is a rock. He says, I know Jan is dead. We're not going where you think we're going. We're going where I say we're going, etc. She pulls the gun out eventually. He says, I hacked the trigger or the safety. Those kind of things allow me to believe that you can show me that Harry's alive in this
Yeah.
situation, because like if you can just say nowadays, and it is crazy to think about it, like they're showing this flashback with Harry as a little kid, and it looks like he's drawing. And in my head, I'm immediately thinking he's drawing on a piece of paper because it's, to us, when you're seeing a flashback of a little kid, it's the old days, right? But to him, it's still very, very, very high tech technology that he's working with that you're not really expecting to see. And, again, you already said it, Kyle. We don't know how powerful, how high tech these gadgets and these things can be. We don't know fully. Harry can pretty much do anything. And the fact that he just showed up, she pulls a gun out and he's like, yo, bro, I hacked the safety. No big deal. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That kind of thing makes me think it could be Gale, it could be Harry, it could be anybody somehow saving him. I don't know how, but I'm just going to say that he's got to be alive somehow.
Okay.
Like the only thing I can think of, like a hint wise, is she being Tellum pretty much turns Salvor's brain off. It feels like she kind of knocks her unconscious. And like, do they have a level of control? How much control do they have over another person's brain? Where like in reality, the only way you die for the most part is when your brain itself dies because it doesn't have oxygen. And so like, can they do something in that way to like bring him back to life? That's the only thing I could possibly think of.
And I don't want to obviously end this bucket without talking about Sal. Like, Kyle, she's not dead, right? We're not getting the double tap here. Are we
No.
getting any taps? Like, but say Harry, if he's dead, he's dead, whatever. But I'm not believing for 1 second. I don't believe Harry's dead. I don't believe Sal's dead. They're all alive, man.
Mhm.
Sal can't be dead. But this is again coming towards we're getting some rules, but is it broken? There has to eventually be some defense, because if you could just snap your fingers and have Sal fall into the water, and like you're saying, Kyle, is she currently drowning because she's knocked out in the water face down? We see the scenario where Gale is sitting there and Sal goes up to her, and Gale turns around and basically straight up uses telekinesis and pushes her away. Like, how powerful are these characters going to get? We see the mule. What I will say that we didn't bring up that I thought was freaking badass and awesome explanation is when Tellum is saying to Gale, the mule didn't attack you from different time periods. He didn't attack you from the future. He did what he did in your vision, and your body believed it was happening, so it burst the blood vessels in the present time, right?
Mhm.
So it wasn't actually technically the mule. Like, you can see this vision
So
and he can
cool.
do that to you, but if you believe that it's not actually happening and you believe you're in a vision, almost like you believe you're in a dream, your present physical body won't react that way, which is freaking awesome. So I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think you guys covered the rest of the buckets. I don't even need to go through it too much detail. Like, you saw Harry leave with the fake ship, the fake Harry leave with the real ship, I should say. That happens. We have the birthday scene, some little bit more bonding between Gale and Sal. And then we have the lore dump from Gale to the Mentalics explaining the threat of the mule. So that's getting them all on board of what's really happening there. You find out about the last Emperor of Ignis for a second. Nothing else I really need to bring up. You do have the reconciliation between Sal and is his name? What's his name again? The guy who pretended to be
Lauren?
Hugo. Lauren, yes. So he seems like a chill guy. They catch up, but then he's
Seems like
also
a chill guy.
hiding. Yeah, he seems like one of the cooler ones. But they are hiding the information that Sal ends up catching on to, and she sees the body of Harry and then drowns. So that was everything you guys talked to. I don't think there's anything new there. Any final parting shots for Ignis before we move on to our next planet?
Yeah, quick. One thing is a quick question, and that is Sal's explanation as to why she knew that this was bullshit and they were trying to keep something from her was because she said she was flipping the coin and it was being blocked, correct? Like,
Yeah.
so she knew that he was blocking it, and that's how he knew there was something suspicious, or she knew that there was something suspicious going on. All right, cool.
I guess it's
Go
a
ahead,
good
Luke.
time to bring up the idea of a pitch that the little boy talks about in the unvoicing scene.
Right,
Like
right.
that's going to matter at some level of
And
each person.
obviously,
Each Mentalic has their own pitch that
and obviously the sea creatures screaming as they die, and then tell them pretty much saying like whether you try to be vegetarian or you're gonna eat meat, you're gonna hear them dying as you eat them. It's
Mhm.
crazy stuff.
My parting shot is just that it seems like Salvor is going to be the actual key to this entire storyline. You know, Harry is somewhat incapacitated, let's say. He's on a spectrum between incapacitated and dead. Sal actually is currently on that spectrum as well at the moment.
Yeah, right.
But I think Salvor is going to be the one that like wakes Gale up, like is just the person that is kind of going to expose everything that's happening. So that's why I just there's no shot that she's like dead or anything like that.
okay.
Will she be incapacitated and in some way from Tellum? I don't know. Maybe that would be the roundabout way that Gale kind of has a realization, but it just feels like Salvor is going to keep like pulling the thread and unravel all of it.
Yeah, so that was what I wanted to bring up, and I appreciate you talking about that. That was going to be my question to you, Kyle. We know that we see maybe the future where Sal is dead in the future, 150 years plus in the future, but she apparently we're getting a fake out death or an actual death right here in this episode. Now, again, for as many times we want to talk about Harry, that could be a final death. Like we see that as, I mean, that could be a dead body floating in the water. Sal, we know the deal. Like she just basically tell him snapped her fingers. Sal fell into the water. Episode ended. Right? We don't have enough time to say, okay, you're dead. But my main question to you, Kyle, here is Tellum is saying throughout these episodes that she believes that the future can be changed or what Gale sees can be manipulated. You can save Sal. Do you believe that? Or do you believe that it is going to be found out that, you know, what Gale sees is canon for what's going to happen and it is inevitable and they just have to come to terms with it?
This feels like the answer can only be like a gut feeling or like what I want to happen. I
Yeah,
hope
exactly.
it's that like it's unchangeable.
Yeah.
And I don't know
I
if
mean,
that's depressing, but that's kind of just what my gut reaction to that question is. I hope that it's unavoidable.
and Tellum is she's kind of contradicting herself because she does say like Gale is an actual seer. Like she does say that in this episode. But then she also says, "But Gale, you can change it. You can save your daughter." So I don't know. I think for the story and for the fact that you know we like our main characters, you would hope that you can change it. But at the same time, I do kind of like the storyline that no, you can't. Like that's the whole point. She sees what she sees, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. It is foretold.
I know it's different, the context of what we're seeing here, but it's so funny to me that you guys are seeing like Sal and Harry die, and you're like, they're not dead. Then you're seeing talking about Sal dead in the vision, like she's dead. It's just funny that it's like the same idea,
Well,
but it's a
that
little bit different.
yeah, and the reason I don't see Sal dying is two things. Number one is because there wasn't a finality to it like you would expect for a death on screen. It faded to black pretty quickly. Number
Mhm.
two is because of the vision, and you
Yeah,
would
yeah.
expect Sal to be alive. But
Mhm.
Harry is more of a gut feeling, definitely.
That's fine. That's fair. all on the board. We'll keep track of that next podcast. So we're going to flip over to our space bucket here. It's really two main scenes, so we should be able to get through this one a little bit quicker. And just to talk about the first portion of this, it's all Hober Mallow specific. It's him jumping into, I don't even know how to really describe it yet because we don't have the verbiage for all of it yet. But it's like the Spacers like Imperial ship. The Homesworns
Yeah.
is what they end up getting called or named later. It's like the main portion of the population of Spacers, which we find out, I think 90% of them, even potentially, where 10% of the Spacers, the Spacer babies, are given to the Empire because they were genetically modified for that specific reason. So they're held as leverage or blackmail by Day, Dusk, and Dawn to keep the Spacers in control, and they're used to just navigate all the jump ships. And what we have here is Hober Mallow, from the directive of Vault Harry, is trying to offer them the obelisk is what it's called, which is what they need. They're either addicted or they require it to live, one or the other. Right. They might even clarify here. He's offering them the ability to come back to the Foundation, and they'll teach them how to make it so that they don't have to rely on the Empire. But this head of the Spacer, of the Homesworn that we're seeing here, she has a name that they say in the next episode. It's like the something center. I didn't actually write it down. I don't know if either of you guys did. They call her like the leader of the Spacers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But she ends up rejecting the deal because she can't risk it, because if the Empire finds out about this, the Empire is going to demand 20%. So she shuts it down and actually ends up ratting to Rios about Hober Mallow. So before we introduce Rios and Glowin to the story, what do you guys think about the deal, Harry's plan for the deal, the new information in the world building we get about the Spacers themselves?
It's nice to get the world building part of it. You know, we get the kind of confirmation. At least I read it as they're not like, it's not like a drug that they're addicted to, because Hober says that it's a micronutrient.
Micronutrient,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
The nutrient that they need.
No, yeah, that their body needs to function and to stay alive. And it was just funny to me that you could tell how much of what he was saying was like exactly what Harry told him to say versus him throwing in his own side of it. Like, he uses the same phrase that she almost speaks back to him, of talking about like the freedom to flow into the universe. And she mentions like, that's I don't even know what the right word would be, but it's, you know,
our dream
guy, let's say, of like just going into the entire universe. And then he ends that with like, you know, if you just help us kick the Empire in the nuts, like that's obviously a Hober special. That's not Harry saying that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I like the concept of this a lot. It failed, let's say, in the first iteration, but it feels like, I don't know, we could get the Spacers on our side. I think eventually I could see Empire overreacting no matter what the outcome was, because she is concerned that if they even hear about the fact that they talked, they'll up the quota percentage to 20. Mm-hmm. And it feels like Empire's ripe for overreacting in a certain way that's then going to push the Spacers towards the Foundation.
Freaking beautiful visuals again.
Thank you for always bringing it up when I'm thinking about it.
My gosh. I saw like an article talking about how, and we've brought it up, shout out to who was it on the Discord? Do we remember?
Spaceman 94.
Yeah. Spaceman 94 shout, and I've seen it online also, but then I also saw an article where people were just giving props to it, saying it looks like the CGI budget of like 5 sci-fi movies, but somehow they have this low budget and they can make it look this beautiful, and really it does. I mean, it's amazing. And I also didn't take notes on the name, but it's
She is Center is her name.
Okay. She is Center is the leader, and then she rats to her daughter, because she wanted to see her daughter in person. She said that was a little bit selfish of her to be able to see her daughter in person. But question for you, Kyle, and I'm going to bounce to the Trantor bucket a little bit, but do you think that this is purposely being done by Harry to ignite this war quicker? Like, is he making this happen, as in he's giving Brother Constant the hologram of him to basically talk shit today and to confront him, versus also this Spacer conversation that he believes wouldn't go on the first try? I agree with you, Kyle, where they're planting the seeds, but Harry may have guessed that the first contact would mean that the leader of the Spacers would rat to the Empire. Do you believe that, or what are you thinking?
It's usually the safest bet to just think that Harry's kind of planned it out.
No, I'm saying as in like planned it out to start the war. Like, is that what you think, or?
Oh, to go that far, I'm not sure. I just know that Harry, I don't think he was maybe anticipating they would accept the offer the first time.
Right. Okay. So that was, yeah. My main question is, do you think Harry would that's what he's doing right now, trying to antagonize the Empire to get this war started?
I guess so. I mean, he seems pretty confident. Let's say. I mean, it's always, is he just saying it? Does he believe it? That's kind of the constant thing we always have to talk about with the show of what's the difference between someone saying something, believing something, thinking something, knowing something.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems to be that's what he's leading towards.
Yeah. And I think did we guess I think we said in the prior pod that we were guessing that the spacers were created missing a nutrient or missing something that's how they were going to be controlled by the Empire. Am I making that up?
You might have
Didn't we
said
say
something
that?
along those lines. No, because
Yeah.
we talked about him a little bit, but I knew we were going to get more world building around him, and we obviously do here. And I also want to just say that the daughter of, what did I say her name is? She is Center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the daughter's name is She Bends Light. So I'm just assuming that She is Center is the leader. I don't actually know if they said that just because of the name.
Seemed like it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it seems like all the spacers are named like that, like 3 words hyphenated, whatever it is. But after the mother reports back to the Empire what's going on here, they jump over to Rios, and we actually see them getting the information. And this is like a huge moment for the Empire to realize that not only did they found out recently the Foundation has the auras or makeshift auras, they now also have jump ships that are farther ahead than their own technology because they don't require spacers. It's almost like all of the pros of the Invictus without any of the cons now that we have these spaceships jumping around, and it's like such prized possessions. So we have eventually Hobermel gets thrown here as a prisoner. They have their conversation, and he escapes using Becky just because that's the kind of dude he is. He's just the con man. He figures ways out of it. But when Rios reports back to Demerzel and Brother Day, they're like freaking out about this, right? Like they have to plan and decide what they're actually going to end up doing about this, which we can talk about their perspective when we go through all the Trantor stuff if you want. But after that conversation, I think I kind of want to lay it up to Kyle here, where we have Glawen and Rios talking about the idea of the Foundation and what their allegiance to the Empire is. Cause I feel like you've been harping on this in a good way, talking about what the potential angle is for these characters and how they're going to deal with the idea that maybe like their oaths to the Empire are wrong. Like it all gets challenged here. And I thought I was thinking about you this whole conversation, taking this in to see like how you would react to this.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think the level that Bell was engaging in it, it's not necessarily a shock. And I know we talked about not only Glawen being someone that is going to eventually be on the Foundation side of things and try to convince Bell that that's actually the way to go, but Bell, his nature of his like very strict morals that he knows in himself and his own principles that he would refuse to bend on and things like that. And I think that's basically a lot of what this conversation was about, in that he doesn't like it at all.
Yeah.
What I was slightly confused on is that it seemed like they got orders off screen and that we weren't entirely sure of what they were. But then we get later in the episode when Day is actually talking with the hologram Harry, and he says, tell General Bell Rios to do XYZ. It seemed like to me when Bell and Glawen are having this conversation is that they were essentially like told to bomb something, because they're talking about like putting civilians at risk and things like that. I mean, maybe it was hypothetical. To me, it felt more like they had a tangible order. But I mean, Bell even talking about assassinating Day, talking about taking down Empire, and it seems like maybe the linchpin or like the area of issue with Bell is that he doesn't trust the Foundation being able to fill the gap of Empire at this point. To him, it's that if they go down that road, it's just basically ushering in the darkness, the state of lawlessness. The quote he says at I've been around the universe. I've seen places that have descended into lawlessness. The weaker objects, rapists are kings, poor are slaves. Life is nothing but emptiness and pain. And yeah, I could see if that's what your thought is of like, that's going to be the consequence of me making XYZ action. I won't make XYZ action. And it seems like maybe the next few episodes is going to be Glawin, or maybe even the two of them as they encounter the Foundation, because they're getting sent to Terminus to look at things, is that maybe they're convinced otherwise of like, okay, these guys kind of looking transitory up in this bitch. Like they kind of got it popping here on Terminus.
They have the abilities. I mean, they can also synthesize Obelisk. That's another big thing that is said. I mean, they are pretty well ahead. And is it because they are the Foundation, as in they're on Terminus and they have a specific goal and they're not distracted like Trantor and Dawn, Dusk, and Day are, and they can focus on, the technology and evolving and pushing further. And Harry knew that would happen, and that's going to be their advantage. They're not going to have the numbers, but they'll have a technological advantage. I can see that. And then if they do get Bell and they get his fleets, dang, that would be big. So we obviously know Empire is going to fall. We know it, and we know Hober Mallow has something to do with it. Is what he has to do with it eventually getting the spacers on his side, or is it going to be something totally different? Is he going to eventually have a different part of his story? I freaking love this character. I love how he gets out of the jam.
He's just fun.
And yeah, he's just a fun character. So yeah, it wasn't a huge bucket for these 2 episodes, but it was very enjoyable and something to think about, and it will become a big bucket in the future, definitely.
Do you keep hearing Obelisk when you think of Obelisk, Yu-Gi-Oh?
Obelisk the Tormentor?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the entire freaking time. Do you have more?
I'm just really thinking too of what is it gonna be with this Hober pierces the hide of the Empire. That's something that's kind of just hanging over all of the episodes, all of the scenes, and things like that. And it feels like it'll be the classic trickster, con man, actually like puts a cause above himself and like sacrifices himself and jumps a ship into something and does that stuff, and he like acts all cool seeing Constant as he does it, and like gives her the bottle of champagne or liquor or spirits or whatever that thing was. It just feels like they're really leading us towards, this is a guy like he's gonna make that decision that you wouldn't expect Hober Mallow to make. It's not gonna be some like tricky dicky thing. It's gonna be a very straightforward, like him sacrificing himself.
Okay,
Agreed.
let's move over to Trantor. Also not too much compared to how much we talked about Ignis. So we shouldn't, we're wrapping up in a little bit. But the first episode 6, literally had 2 scenes on Trantor, and we can just talk about them in one conversation because they're not that crazy. But Constant and Polly arrive to Trantor. They get arrested, and then they have a heart-to-heart about his faith versus her belief, which was like a cool conversation. And we also subtly found out that the spacers have been serving the Empire for 600 years in this bucket. It was a weird time to find it out, but that's more world building for just the timeline there. And then on the other side of things with the Empire itself, we have the big speech where Day announces to the world, to the Imperium, that Sareth is the new Empress, and then she takes the unexpected speech and kind of controls the narrative there. But those are the only 2 things that happened in episode 6. So let's isolate those 2 if you guys have comments before we really jump into the more meaty part of episode 7.
I thought the conversation between Polly and Brother Constant was great. I mean, you already talked about it, Luke, in your quick summary, but Polly explains that he's seen Harry, right? And he says, get rid of my drugs. I'm not going to drink anymore. I tasted the finest wine from our prophet, pretty much. There's nothing sweeter. There's nothing that's going to ever be better. But then he does explain, like, damn, like, Brother Constant, you never saw Harry. You believed, you had faith without actually ever seeing Harry walk out of the vault like I did. would I believe in Harry the same way that you do if I didn't see that as a kid? And that's what he's getting upset about because, he has his vices. He's had his vices, and he believes, to see Harry to make this his life. But Brother Constant made it her life without ever seeing Harry and only being taught it, pretty much like a pure religion where you don't have the first person, the POV of the actual God, prophet, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It was well done. Touching moment.
Yeah.
I honestly at first thought that he was kind of like purposely setting them up. Polly, this is of like telling her to dump the drugs, and then that would get like flagged in the system, and that's what brought the cops there. But obviously, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually him thinking things out in that way. But the Day and Sareth stuff was, I think, classic. It felt very in line with their characters as well. Overconfident Day, uncontrollable Sareth. I mean, she makes that speech that seems so against what Day would ever want her
Yeah.
to say, where it's like, we serve at the pleasure of everyone, in the Empire and things like that. That's pretty much the antithesis of what they think.
It's like Marjorie's, wasn't it?
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say it's such a Marjorie and Joffrey kind of thing,
Yeah,
where I'm not
yeah.
saying Day is as bad as Joffrey, but he's obviously pretty bad. Sorry, Kyle, you're bad, bro. And I
Day
thought Marjorie right away.
Day is
What'd you say,
worse,
Luke?
probably like just by body count, like of
Well,
killing.
I guess. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. I think Joffrey's, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that'd be a cool conversation to have.
It
Actually,
would be. It actually would
who's
be.
worse?
Yeah.
Well, it's a little, comparing someone who controls a galaxy versus someone who has somewhat taboo control over a kingdom. or
Dude, I'll
seven
tell you right
kingdoms.
now, if Joffrey could make his
Oh
Yeah.
my
turn and just
God.
kill planets, he would freaking do it for fun, man.
Yes, if
That's actually a
Joffrey
good point.
was put in the position of Empire, it would be worse. If
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. I definitely think
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do any other comments on just? I guess we'll talk more about Sareth in the next part here. I really have the next whole episode split into 3 separate talking points. The first being everything to do with the heir, where we have all the medical procedure going on. We have Sareth being escorted by Demerzel. Their subtle conversations, the little digging back and forth, where Sareth and Rue are really staking claim over Sarah's body. They don't want to give up the idea that the people in the lab can just make the babies until she has the guarantee that she is the Empress. So she's delaying it, and Demerzel takes the bait, right? So she buys herself some time. But then we also do have the Demerzel conversation where she is directly threatening her at how much of a badass she is. She's like, I was very efficient. She admits to killing her family, right? Like that's almost that's just like said here. So we could just leave it at that, where and it actually breaks Sareth, and it, she's not just some hard ass that's here on a mission. Like she still has all these emotions, and she's very tied to the result of what's going to happen here in the Empire. But do you guys want to bring up anything for that conversation when she's like sitting on the medical table?
I think it really exposes, again, that point you've just made about Sareth, and maybe how not necessarily wrong we were, but like our initial hopes for the character were just misguided. We talked last podcast recording of, okay, they found out that Demerzel is a robot. What are they going to do with this information? And telling Demerzel that they know in like a private situation, Bush League.
Yeah. So
it just not at all what you probably should have done in that situation. That's a card that you probably keep a little closer. And also, I think it shows too an underestimation of Demerzel and what Demerzel is capable of. I mean, Demerzel, I would even go so far as to say, you said that Demerzel takes the bait of delaying the thing. I almost want to say that was what Demerzel wanted, is the delay of all that stuff.
Born. I don't
exactly, because they have the kind of the first scene almost is Demerzel and Day are talking, and she's kind of hand on his back and being like, so second thoughts, like you're not having any of those, right? Where she was almost kind of probing,
sure, bro?
For him to say something. So I just think that Demerzel is still completely in control of everything
Yes.
that's happening. I don't think that Sareth is anything really that concerns or worries her too much. I think she felt
Right.
like she had to put her in her place for sure in private in that way, which she 100% did. But Demerzel is, and it's almost even beneficial for Demerzel too, that like, okay, they know this about me, like that's just another
Yeah.
piece of information now that she has that she can act on. So she just, in my opinion, Demerzel kind of just continues to collect W's.
Yeah. Demerzel is just goaded, man. But I will say, to start off with the medical procedure stuff, I believe it's totally rational for Sareth and Rue to say,
Yep.
yeah, no babies until I'm the Empress. Totally
Mhm.
rational. Now, Kyle, I couldn't agree with you more, man. L's all across the board for Sareth when it comes to calling out Demerzel and even antagonizing her in the room when she's like, I know you and Day are doing the damn thing. Like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, I understand. And she probably knows that it's just like, for lack of a better term, the surgeons, the servants, and the medical people that you can like wipe their memory after she says it. But at the same time, like she hasn't seen what we've seen from Demerzel, as in killing Dawn and all those kind of things. But at the same time, you saw half her freaking face ripped off, cut in half, and you know that she's a badass. You don't antagonize her like that. And it was very immature and very not what we thought from Sereth when it came to getting this information, double the information. The fact that she's a robot and the fact that her and Day are having relations and then just throwing them out there and just putting your cards on the table and not using them in the Game of Thrones. No, that was not Marjorie Tyrell of her, that part,
Mhm.
after doing the awesome thing of undermining Day in public with the speech, and then what she does after that, it's just that didn't do it for me. And I'm still under the impression, I think from what you said, Kyle, you agree that Demerzel is way bigger of a dog than we're realizing, even as viewers. Like, I really do think that she is like just I don't know how exactly to say it. Like, I still think that she has to. That's another thing that we have to talk about. I thought it was really cool how she was saying in this explanation they followed the three laws. Her kind followed the three laws, but then she became someone who followed one law, one rule, and that was to follow Empire, to do stay loyal to Empire, pretty much. And then Sarah
Mhm.
basically says, "Well, I will become the Empress. Will you follow me?" And she says, "I follow Empire." Awesome stuff. Just walks away. Again, we have to figure out how that rule works. If it's a bullshit rule, we've been messing with that for a long time here when it comes to Demerzel, but there's something about her where she's even bigger, I believe, than we realize. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but I do believe so.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we said last episode too, it seems like she has almost been planted by Cleon the First too. Of like when they have the AI conversation with Cleon the First, and he's like, "That's they're concerned. This is Dusk and Dawn about some things," and he's just like, "Already been considered. Like it's outside of your pay grade, fellas. Like
Yeah,
don't even
right,
worry about it." And it seems like the only answer to that is Demerzel, and
right. The only
so
constant, not brother constant, but the only constant since Cleon the First is Demerzel.
yeah, it's
So
just so interesting. I want her to have like she doesn't have a sounding board to be able to know what she's actually thinking.
right,
There's no character or situation where that can happen, and I'm just dying for it because what is her actual opinion on him ending the genetic dynasty? Like, what
yeah,
is like her inner dialogue? Like, it's just I just want it so bad, but I just can't. I'm waiting for a situation in where it can really occur. It has to be like something super private. Like it's something
yeah.
that like the risk of it getting out can't happen. I'm just like, so like, is it going to be her and Sarah? Is it going to be her and Day in a situation where she like, reveals of like what her actual influence and power is and like it has to explain it? I don't know, but I just want a moment like that. And we might be falling into the classic trap of like we're so confident and we want XYZ to be true that like everything we think of through the show is funneled through that perspective. But like I've said when we brought it up episodes ago, I don't even care at this point because it's fun to assume that she is this like kind of puppet master at the top of things.
Stay tuned. Is all I'll say.
Yeah. I can't wait. And Luke, you're telling us that these episodes are bangers, and so I just can't wait. But
I'll say Demerzel's name is in the description of one of these episodes coming up. That's all I'll say. I'll just leave it at that.
It's screaming the Dawn situation where we're gonna have this day doing what he wants, thinking he's doing what he wants all the way up until the moment, and then she snaps his neck and replaces him, and then he decides, never mind, I don't want to get married right before the marriage or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how these plans have to work, because why wouldn't she have just killed this day the moment he even brought it up?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why we're wrong, but I still think there's something to there. I still think this is it. I just don't.
Yeah, is she giving him as much opportunity as humanly possible to change his mind before she actually has to make a decision? I could see that being the truth.
Because there could be, like, if we're going to talk about her being a robot and her code and the 3 laws and the law changing to I obey Empire, or I do what's best for Empire, to your point, Kyle, could it be that the law here, it's almost like Dexter's code for anyone who watches Dexter? We'll be covering that on the podcast on Binge Empire. But, you know, one of his biggest things here is don't kill anybody that's innocent, right? But then there's another part of the code that says don't get caught. So those kind of contradict each other in a way, because what if he's about to get caught and the innocent person is a cop that's going to catch him, right? So for Demerzel, we have a scenario where she follows Empire. So like you said, Kyle, she gives as much leeway as possible for this Empire to make the right decision. But then at some moment, she knows that it's over. There's no chance for him to make this decision. So now doing what's best for Empire, as in Cleon the First, is to kill this day and to replace him. And that's when she's allowed by her code to do it. I don't know if that's the answer or not, but I kind of like that too.
Yeah, I'm so picturing how great the scene could be of Lee Pace as this day getting this realization of Demerzel being like way more than he thought and having all of this influence and stuff. And again, just the fact that he says early in this season that she approached him pretty much about them having sexual relations, which just seems crazy. It seems so outside the bound of what she would do. And it just feels like there was maybe not the purest intentions potentially behind that.
Right.
I'm very excited for your guys' take on this next scene, because just like the Demerzel topic, this has been something that's been a very consistent theme for our podcast. And this is the 2 conversations we have, which is Sareth going and talking to Day, and they talk about her family again, and it ends really bad. It ends to the point where she's so pissed off and like emotional, she goes right to Dawn. And then this is where we get the conversations that you guys have been asking about the succession, what it means for Dawn and Dusk after the genetic dynasty ends. And then we have, of course, Sareth's idea about still wanting to marry Day to become the Empress, but not wanting to pass his genes on, because she thinks that this Dawn is somebody that isn't cruel yet, and she would much rather pass his legacy on. And it starts to become like a little bit of like a flirty romantic thing. But of course, the risk of that is just as bad as you could possibly be, right? You know what I mean? And they even reference the last Dawn that defected, which was in season 1. So that's something that gets now told to the children, or to the clones as they're growing up. So throw it all out there. What are we thinking? Do we still have questions about how Dawn feels about these things? And of course, I need you guys to give a prediction of what you think Dawn's going to end up doing.
Is Dawn just as Dawn susceptible to these kind of things? Again, we know that the DNA, the genes have been evolving, have been altered, and they continue to do so years and years into the future. And as the years go on since the first alteration, But honestly, I'm watching this as Dawn is with Sereth now, and he is going to be against Day. I'm taking it face value here. Again, for the 1,000th time, the face changing thing, it is what it is. But the fact that you could just do that in so many different scenarios could be tough and used in a weird way in the future. I hope it's not. As long as you don't use it in a weird way, I'm fine. I just don't like those kind of loopholes that you can use. But yeah, I mean, I think Dawn loves Sereth, and I think he's
Whoa.
not. Yeah, they're in a tree. KISSING, bro.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that's you,
Yeah,
baby. That's you.
he's susceptible for falling in love, man.
Yeah,
Does
it
she
does
love
kind of
him?
I believe
no.
so. Okay.
Oh,
I believe
okay. A
that
little
I don't
disagreement.
know about love. I mean, that's, that's just
Okay.
like Kyle. I think he loves her. Now, I don't know that she loves him. Okay. It doesn't have to be equal there, dude. Come on.
Mhm.
Come on, man.
Yeah, well, I'm
I
saying
think
you
that,
said yes, and then you said, "Well, I don't know about love." So then the
no,
answer is no.
no. I think Dawn loves Sereth, but I don't know that Sereth loves Dawn. I think she
Yeah.
likes him. And I think she's also knows the benefits of having him love her. I do believe though that this will become like an actual relationship that they do care for each other and love each other. I do think it will. And I don't know how long that can even freaking last, of course, because like you said, Luke, and like Dawn says himself, it's an astronomical thing that he's going to be doing if they do agree to this. I mean, he'll be dead in 2 seconds if it's found out.
Yeah, I don't think I think her view of him is purely through a lens of kind of like practicality of
Okay.
accepting the premise that she has to marry Day. What are my actual options here? And he is the best option in a bad situation. I agree with you.
Mhm.
I think it could grow into something more than that. But I just, again, I think it's purely a thing of practicality of like, hey, you guys, your genes are alike. We could have a baby. She kind of tosses out the idea like we could bang a lang and have the baby too. You know, you could throw in something
Yeah.
for him on his end. You know, it's not just us extracting something from you. We could actually get down and to it. And I just like how she kind of hands him the gun. I don't even know the fertility gun, for lack of a better term. And it's like, I heard it's
Yeah.
not that bad. Like, you're good. You're asking a lot from him. It's not as
Yeah.
simple as you're putting it out there. But it was also interesting that she says the quote, "If the one true heir were yours, your legacy will be assured. Don't you want to cast a shadow?" Essentially. And what I don't understand is that's not totally accurate, because it would be like everyone would
It would
assume it was not his kid. So
It's
there would
only
be,
in his own mind for as long as
yes,
he's alive. Yep, correct.
yeah. And I know that Dusk has mentioned before, was it this Dusk? Was another Dusk? I don't entirely remember. I think it was this Dusk of, they kind of announced that it's normal in a way for Dawn to be naive, you know,
Yeah.
to want to be in love, to think about at that stage of your life, like, oh, look, I want to fall in love and I want to do all of that stuff. And then eventually you start to realize that that stuff doesn't really align with what actually your destiny is and things like that. And I hope that he agrees to it, you know, and takes the plunge, and because that's just interesting television for us.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine a scenario where it works out well.
Would you rather be, well, let me rephrase this. Do you think it'll work out? If it doesn't work out, is it going to be worse ramifications or less worse than Azora?
She means
For
she got
Sereth or for Dawn if it's caught?
Sereth.
Oh, geez, worse.
Okay.
I
Now,
can't, I don't know. I feel like they would
Sereth
still
is.
use her and like
Oh, you
need to kind of
mean.
put her out there as the Empress, that they can't really hide her the way that they
I'm
treated Azura.
Yeah, I'm asking like what would happen to her if this got
Oh,
found
okay.
out.
Okay.
It
Because
can't be
in Day's
worse.
mind, I would say it's worse. But to what he does outwardly, it depends, obviously, if they actually get married or not.
Okay.
My thought still is that Demerzel is going to stop them from ever getting married. So that's where I can say that she's open for this, sadly, a bad ending. And I want to ask you, Kyle, because who knows what the hell's going to happen in 3 episodes? We only have 2 more episodes to talk about it. Do you believe Sereth will survive this season?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay. I mean, it's so tough because we know how much time passes and everything between episodes. There's the opportunity for time to pass. I agree with you. Like I said, I really do think that Demerzel is going to stop this. Do you believe that if this day is trying, like we know that the Empire is going to fall. Do you believe that technically the Empire is going to fall during this current dynasty? Like these three may be the last day, dusk, and dawn that we have.
Signs seem to point that way, but I just
Okay.
can't. Like Lee Pace has to be in season 3 and beyond.
Yeah, no,
There
I
has to be
agree.
a way that a day, like, is it one of the ones from a tube that
Yeah,
gets
right,
saved and smuggled by like true believer? I don't know, but I
right.
feel like Lee Pace has to keep being on my television screen. So
I agree. I
I
agree.
agree with
his
that.
hair looks fantastic as this day. That was like literally the day in Sereth scene that they have in the garden. First thing I wrote down was, I mean, the layered curls just look fantastic on this guy with like the little black
earring.
earring. Yeah, man.
I mean,
I
this
mean, I'm
earring's
killing
so
it.
cool.
dude, Kyle, you know that you're this day. This is you, so I'm glad that you're having fun with it. But honestly, he's the most shredded we've seen him. He's
He's a
got the
beast.
sweet ass earring. His hair's doing it for us.
Yeah.
He's beautiful. I mean, he's totally the best version of Day that we've gotten.
Mhm.
Physically, yes. Mentally, maybe not so much, but
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
That's fine. 'Cause you could
Mentally,
argue-
it might have been the season
Mentally,
one
I'd say the last,
after,
yeah.
after he got changed from the trials. It might have actually been him. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been, that one would have been so cool if it would have been, all right, the dynasty's over and we need one more mortal Lee Pace character to exist throughout the seasons.
yeah, that's
That
why I
one
was
would have been the
salty about
one.
that end of
Yeah.
season. Like we're
That
jumping
one
so
would have been the
forward in
one.
time. Yeah,
yeah,
but
but you didn't know what
the
was to
scene-
come.
Yeah,
Which
that's
now
true.
you're happy.
Right,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Yeah,
right.
we admitted that too. I think he just has a funny scene here of he's like still trying to keep up the live, like, oh man, like we're gonna do like great things for your family's legacy. And then once he knows
Yeah.
that she knows, he's like, all right, here's the deal. Like you're
Yeah,
only here
yeah.
because I will it. All right. So you
Mhm.
better say
Yeah.
thank you and get the
Mhm.
hell out of here. I just like the way that he was just like, whatever, I'm fucking sick of this charade anyway.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the last scene here. And this is just going to be still centered on Trantor, still centered on Day, but this time we're going to have the payoff of what Vault Harry's plan was for sending
Mhm.
Brother Constant and Brother Polly to the Empire. And we have this whole scene of just Harry superimposing his face after he almost subtly implanted part of himself inside Brother Constant. We could talk about whatever the hell that actually means, but it was really just to have a one-on-one conversation with the Empire and tell me what you guys think about the ramifications of this, because I thought this was a good scene and it was an important scene of like understanding what Harry's plan was for these two.
To be able to have Lee Pace and Jared Harris face to face again makes everything worth it. About a kiss on the forehead adds adds Harry's consciousness into Brother Constant so that he can project himself through her, whatever that even means. But I don't even care because I love this scene. The back and forth was great, and this is another scenario where I'm saying this is why I believe that he was planning to antagonize Empire further into war and actually having the end result be war. You have Harry say to Hober Mallow, yo, man, go to the Spacers. And then that obviously ends not great for him, as in, hey, the Spacer goes to basically Empire and says, yo, this guy's trying to get us to go against you. And then Brother Constant coming out as Harry, having this conversation with Day, antagonizing. I just think that was the plan for Harry to start the war.
Yeah, I mean, he adds the quote too: "We sue for peace not because we fear we will lose, but because we know with mathematical certainty, if there is war, we shall win." And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's posturing in a sense, but also I think he believes that too. So it's going to be interesting, as always, what the impact of this confrontation is on Day. What kind of ways does he spiral, or what kind of actions? We see that he orders Demerzel to tell Belrios, like, go to Terminus, set up whatever around the Foundation. They want to confiscate. They're not just going to bomb it to smithereens because they want to confiscate all the technology. Because in his words, it's theirs. It's property of the Empire, in a sense. And he also, I think, was right totally when he calls out Harry's hypocrisy in a way where he's like, oh, look at you, like extending your own lifespan to continue to have influence over the world. Like that's essentially what you've chided our genetic dynasty on doing. And you're kind of doing it in your own way. You're the same person, you're not necessarily doing all the roundabout things that we're doing, but at the end of the day, if you strip down all of the details, like it's pretty much the same thing that you're doing. Yep. And I think we've talked about it too at season 1, potentially even into this season, and that it felt a little weird of Harry like trying to preserve his own life and like become this kind of messianic figure. But he obviously believes that it's necessary in some way to be able to have the Foundation be successful. But I do think it's an important theme that maybe the show is trying to show us, and I don't even know if theme's the right word, but that Harry is kind of very similar in a sense.
Yeah.
And like I think it's important for us and the show to recognize that. What will that mean in the future? No idea. No clue what that actually means. But I think it's important to highlight it, and then maybe we'll be able to come back to the conversation on it.
So 2 questions, Kyle. Number 1, you know how you talked about the fact that we think Demerzel could be very, the puppet master, or even more important than we realize. So we're just like making that canon in our own heads, and we're spinning things that way. We also, my question to you is, we also do that with Harry and even Gale, where we assume that they know everything. They're always one step ahead. Am I thinking that I saw Harry kind of make a face or like his eye twitched when they told him that the genetic dynasty has ended and there's going to be a 4th throne? Do you believe that Harry knew that was part of the trajectory of psychohistory, that at one point, Empire one of them will go that route and the genetic dynasty will actually end? Or am I just like kind of seeing things when I saw his reaction? I'm like seeing a reaction in my own head and taking it that way.
It's really hard to believe that Harry wouldn't have known something like that, but it's also, they gave us the example of Ra's and Gale being something that wasn't foreseen. We know that things can happen that technically psychohistory hasn't foretold and kind of planned for. I would like it to be that that's something that he hadn't considered, because he mentions because he mentions that, it's a very vague statement, but that the Cleonic dynasty, the genetic dynasty, is going to be the reason why Empire falls and the galaxy civilization itself is plunged into darkness. That could mean a lot of things.
Yep.
And could it be that it is almost in a roundabout way of the way that they go about ending the genetic dynasty is actually the cause of what would happen? I don't know. We can see, we'll find out. I don't know when's the next time we'll get a scene with AI Harry from the vault.
Yeah.
Could be interesting. I hope we see him by the end of this season, because I think we can get some more answers there as well.
Yeah. And question number 2 is definitely more of a gut feeling. We're assuming here, I've already said it, we've said it a million times, we're assuming, we like it as canon in our own heads, that Demerzel has a way bigger role to play. Do you think that Harry can make any assumptions similar to us, or he ever would have, knowing that he's always been around? And when I say always been, like a lot of the time from the flashbacks, we know that he arrives in Trantor and he sees Demerzel with the Empire as often as anybody else, maybe more often. Do you think he has an assumption about Demerzel, or do you think that this is more along the lines of individuality and psychohistory, and he's not really going to go there? And again, it's all gut, because if we're wrong about Demerzel, then it's not even a valid question. But if we're right, what do you think?
I think if we're right, it could be something that's surprising. I think Harry could be someone that's susceptible to overlooking individuals in that sense of he maybe takes it for granted that Demerzel is just, he probably maybe knows she's a robot and is AI, and maybe probably trusts the concept of the code that she has and that she can only act certain ways. I would say that that's not something that maybe he's thinking, if we're right about what we think about her. I don't think that he's maybe thinking that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would be a good explanation just to use that as another way of explaining the individuality of psychohistory and how it's not based on your thoughts and your assumptions and your analysis of one individual. And I agree with you, though. I think he does know 100% that she's a robot.
It would be interesting to think about if there were more robots, would that count as individuals or is it just the collective technological AI? If that can be considered in psychohistory, but there's no way to answer that because there's only one.
And your point, and you saying that, Luke, I do just want to say nothing important, but it is very cool when they're talking about the spacers and they basically have like the hive mind kind of scenario where they can
Mhm.
speak to each other the way that they do. I just thought that was really cool.
I guess it's like in a way that they're connected to staying up through jumps that they can communicate through worm. I don't know what the
Yeah, yeah.
reasoning is. I'm just trying to headcanon
I
something.
just, I just thought it was funny when Hober is standing there and she starts doing what she does. She's glowing because she's talking to her daughter, and he's like, "What's going on here? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Are we?" He's like,
No,
"We
he's
good? Are you
great, man.
accepting the deal?" Or
He's funny,
what does that
dude.
mean? What does that mean? What are you doing?
All right, I think that's it.
That was a fun episode.
And we got 2 more really fun ones, I think. The next 2 recordings are gonna be a blast.
Yeah. So, everyone, if you don't remember from us talking about it earlier, we're going to record 8 and 9. So that will be 8 and then the penultimate. And then we will have an episode specifically for the finale, which will be an enormous episode because it will be us finally being on the same level playing field as Luke. And Luke can give us all of his thoughts. He's been perfectly guiding us through these 2 seasons, but he hasn't really been able to been given the stage the same way that we have. So I can't wait for that, man. Otherwise, guys, we're covering Murderbot on here. There's 2 episodes left of Murderbot. This is a great show to binge. So if you're not watching Murderbot, quickly 20-minute episodes, just bang it out. 8 episodes. Catch up to us. Listen to the pod if you'd like, and follow us with 9 and 10. Or if you really want to, wait till the season's over and binge the whole thing and then listen to a little bit of the pod if you want. But the core podcast is covering Murderbot currently. We're obviously going to be covering the rest of Foundation, and the start of Foundation Season 3 will be on July 11th. We'll be covering that weekly. Smoke just came out. I know that we're in all things Apple TV podcast, so I just want to bring it up. We may talk about it as a catch up. It just so happens that we're so busy covering Murderbot and Foundation, we won't be able to do it weekly. But this will be a banger of a show. I really believe it. If anyone has seen Blackbird, it's the same creator, same writer. Taron Egerton is the same lead actor. Sadly enough, Paul Walter Hauser is not in this, but it's okay. Everything that the creator of Blackbird does has been awesome. So check out Smoke. It just came out. Hopefully, we'll get to do a catch up on that. Otherwise, Binge Empire will be covering Squid Game. We're going to be doing maybe, I would say, a part 1 and a part 2. There's only 6 episodes of Squid Game season 3. So we're thinking 3 episodes to start and then 3 episodes to end. Dexter Resurrection will be dropping on the same exact day as Foundation Season 3. I will be covering that with Kathleen. If you're a fan of Your Friends and Neighbors and our coverage of that, me and Kathleen covered that. We'll be covering Dexter on the Binge Empire podcast. And the Bingetown TV podcast has been weekly dropping just fun episodes, debates, drafts, recommendations, all of the above, just fun conversations about TV, movies, and pop culture. So it's all going to be in the description. And if you guys want to give us a review, we would really, really appreciate that. Otherwise, we'll be back. We're almost there. The season is almost done. We are the Core Podcast, and thank you so much for listening.